with infinite complacence, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Get ready for ANOMACON 2025. It's a free virtual conference live streaming on September 20th on YouTube, Twitch, X, and Facebook. Created by Ryan Sprague of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast, ANOMACON unites unique voices from academia, science, and entertainment. Join us for discussions on UFOs, the paranormal, cryptids, conspiracy theories, and all things anomalous. Hear from amazing speakers like actor Michael Ian Black, astronomer Dr. Beatrice Villarreal, marine biologist Shiana Steingass, UFO researchers Peter Robbins and Christina Gomez, and so many more. Plus, our Master of Ceremonies, podcast legend Jim Harold, will guide us through the day. ANOMACON kicks off at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and runs all day and night. Subscribe to the Somewhere in the Skies YouTube channel or visit anomacon.com to learn more. Once again, that's anomacon.com. ANOMACON, getting to the heart of life's mysteries, one discussion at a time.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Barry back on with me. Now, Barry was on for episode number 510, and I titled that The Boogeyman. And I suppose, I haven't decided yet, Barry, but to keep things continuity-wise, I don't know, maybe I should title all of these The Boogeyman Part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but maybe not, because we are going to be moving away from why, of course, I titled that episode that particular thing. I did that really, not only did it fit, but your professional background, I thought you would appreciate that title. But what we want to do, and let me just let the listeners know, is you sent me a comprehensive bullet point list, and we are going to go, it's either by, like this now, second episode is your teen years, and then the next one will be like more psychic kind of stuff, dreams and different connections, and then the next one is a certain place that we're going to talk about. So these are all going to be separate episodes so that we can really move through things at a pace that we can cover things properly. Right, Barry? So, sorry, long-winded. Welcome back.
Hi, Shannon. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we talked about a lot on that very first episode. We talked about your memories of being taken, and then, of course, your very scary experiences while living in a very haunted home. And one of the previous owners was just not happy to have roommates. So that's why I titled that one The Boogeyman, because it was something that you actually called him. And I thought, well, I don't want people to think this is like a funny episode, because it wasn't funny. And I wasn't poking fun, because you used that term. And I thought, well, I think he'll like this anyway, because he said it, and his professional background just ties right in.
Well, yes, I like things, a scary movie, and it does sound like there's probably a movie out there with that title. But I kept saying that because I was avoiding to say the name and his real name, Mr. Wolf. But when we were talking about the house, and I got into where I was talking about what the psychic's impressions were, I got a male voice came on to in my earphones on my right ear, and it said two or three words to me while I was speaking to you, and then I asked you, "Hey, what was that?" And you said, "I didn't say anything," and that kind of freaked me out a little bit, because I was like, "Where did that come from, and what in the world did it say?" I don't know, because I missed what it said, but it was a little bit strange. But yeah, we're going to move away from the boogeyman, and although he still haunts me to this day, but in and always will, probably in some way or another. But yeah, we're going to talk about my interesting, some of the interesting things in my teen years that have happened.
Yeah, wherever you want to start, Barry. And if you feel like you need to set things up in some certain way, you go right ahead. But wherever you want to start, up to you.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, if anybody listened to the last episode, my parents got divorced, and after living in that house, and all the craziness that happened, we moved as children. My mother took us kids, and we moved into my grandparents' former home. They had moved out and bought a neighbor's house, which was in a rural area right near a nice large lake in Western New York. And so we went from being in town kids living near a tool factory to the country life a little bit and being around a lake. Growing up as kids, we would always go see our grandparents, and there were uncles and aunts and cousins around and in that area. So we were pretty comfortable in that area. So I moved there when I was probably 13, going on 14 years old. One of the house that we moved into, like I said, my grandparents had lived there for probably, I think, from 1953 till 1973 or something, 74, when we moved in, somewhere right around that time. So, as far as I know, there were no issues with the house that I was aware of. But the house was built in 1930, so it was a duplex, and my uncle and my aunt lived on the one side of it was a house, big, large home, split directly in half, so that there was a one side, they were almost identical mirrored images of upstairs and a downstairs and so forth. So we moved in, and one night I had gone to this is back in the 1975. So I went to one of those, they called it a head shop or a hippie shop back then, kind of like a Spencer's Gifts type of a place, where I wanted to get some blacklight posters for my room, and thought that stuff was pretty cool. And I don't know that my mom was thrilled with that, but I wanted to decorate my new room and everything. So I bought some posters, and I bought an incense burner. And it was a brass incense burner that was in the shape of an crocodile. Basically, it was made in India, and it was like a flat piece cut out in the shape of the crocodile with a lot of engraved details on it. And in the center of it, there was a cup, um, that was where you would put your incense cone down into it. And the reason I'm telling you about an incense burner is because it's part of the story here, obviously. But I was getting ready to go to bed one night, and I decided to light an incense cone. And in the package of the incense, um, there was a copper coil that came with it, and you pulled the coil up, and it was like a cone shape. So, and there's a little loop at the top where you drop the cone in upside down and let that burn, and then the ashes would drop down. And I decided to put the coil up over top of the brass incense burner over the little cup that was there, so that the ashes would fall into the cup and I wouldn't have to worry about anything catching on fire or anything. And I basically lit the incense and then went to bed. I don't know why I did that. I was just a teenager, but you know, you do these things, and it probably wasn't good to be sitting in the room breathing all that smoke, but I did it anyways. And when I turned the lights out, the room was almost pitch black because we were in the country atmosphere and there was just no outside lights, and it happened to be a dark summer night. And I was laying in bed, and I was just kind of staring at the glowing ember of the incense, and all I could see was just a red dot on the other side of the room on my dresser. And I was just sort of staring at it for a little bit, and I was trying to get ready to go to sleep. I closed my eyes, and as I was laying there, I started to feel oddly disoriented. It was kind of strange because I thought in my mind, I was like, wow, I can't tell what direction my body's in. It felt like I I was awake, but I was thinking this seems strange. I just couldn't tell what was going on. And at that point, I suddenly got this really weird feeling that there was a presence in my room. The energy seemed to have changed all of a sudden, and I was laying there kind of in fear, and I thought, well, this is what's going on. And I opened my eyes up and I looked and I could see the incense ember burning there in the same place. And there, I thought, this is silly. Just go to sleep. I closed my eyes again, and I could not help but this strange feeling again that the something was in the room with me, and that there was this energy shift, and I could feel it in my on my body, kind of almost the hair kind of stands up on end or whatever. And I opened my eyes again, and I looked, and the red ember and it had moved a few inches from where it originally was. And all of a sudden, I thought, What's going on here?" And I was afraid that something was going to catch on fire or something. So even despite how uncomfortable I felt, I ended up jumping up and running. I didn't have a light near my bed, a lamp or anything, so I had to jump up and run and hit the light switch. And when I did, I went over and looked at the ember, and the incense cone had been lifted up out of the coil, and it was placed upright on the very tip of the crocodile nose, in a very precarious place that there's no way it could have fallen by itself. There was no there was no way this could have just happened on its own. And I realized at that moment that something what did come into my room, and that scared the crap out of me. So
So
that
up till then, what kinds of activity had you heard about from anybody else?
Yeah, that's the thing is, the I should tell you that the area that we were in, the whole area was kind of strange. And it was, near a big lake. And as kids, we would run around in the woods out there and find native artifacts, carved little stone tools and arrowheads and pottery shards. So there was, a long history of peoples living in around that lake. And there was also, during the Victorian era, there was a lot of people that were around the lake as well, and hotels built right near where I was living at one point in time. So as a kid, we would run around and see these remnants of trolley tracks and places that were there at one time in the woods. There was an old gazebo. There was woods at this point when I was a kid, but there was a huge hotel right next door to where the house that we moved into was. So, makes you wonder. I don't know that there was, I, you know, nobody in my family ever said there was anything strange about the house itself, but there could very well have been spirits roaming around that land. And matter of fact, the people that I have talked to about that, my uncle said to me, it was a spooky place around there, kinda, but as kids, it was, quite a playground for us, running around the creeks and, looking, I remember going up and down, there was a fields where farmers were growing crops, and we would go up and down there when they plowed and look for, arrowheads and stuff. So, I don't know what it was that came into my room, but, I got confirmation that it wasn't my imagination. Something stopped by, and I, for the life of me, can't figure out why, but I couldn't help but think later that incense is used for a lot of ritualistic purposes. Did this get some attention somehow, or was it just a total random thing, or a family member that, I had a lot of relatives that lived around there at one point. somebody stop in, but it wasn't terrifying. Well, it scared the crap out of me, but it wasn't. That was all it was. It was just this strange little thing that let me know, oh, I was here, and this kind of a messed with my mind a little bit.
So that's all you recall mostly at that time is your uncle simply just saying, "Oh yeah, it's a spooky place."
Well, the whole he was referring to the whole neighborhood more than
Mhm.
anything. Um, but yeah, as far as the house goes, I cannot really recall any other things that I was aware of. There was a huge attic in that house, and the entrance to the attic happened to be in the closet of my bedroom, which
Oh,
you know,
lovely.
yeah, yeah, and so that was an interesting thing, and I remember climbing up there and going into this. I mean, the attic was absolutely huge. And it was creepy, but there were remnants of things from years gone by there. But maybe I stirred something up by being curious and exploring around in there. But so it could have been that I, you know, got whatever's attention it was. But it seems like I get said before. It seems for some reason I am the magnet. If there's anything roaming around, it will notice me, and I don't know why this is, but it seems to be that's how it is for me. So it just was a quirky little thing that happened at my new place that we moved to, and so I thought I would share it. It's not earth shattering story, but it is interesting that whatever it was, it had the ability to lift this little cone right up out of there, turn it upside right, and place it meticulously in a little narrow spot. Just let me know it was there.
It's been so long for me since I've really experienced anything strange that see you say that that's such a small thing, but to me I would just be tickled to have something like that happen right now. To me that would be a big deal. So don't try to downplay your experiences because that to me sounds pretty cool. As you say, it would have to pick that very specific spot on the croc's nose for it to balance that way, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Of course, we probably had a little post-traumatic stress after living in that other house,
I would
so,
say so.
so then you move and you think, oh, it's all going to be over, but obviously I had paranormal experiences before we had moved into that childhood home. And then after we moved out of there, I start having other paranormal experiences. So, I apparently it isn't just the location. you know Somehow I don't know how the call it weird luck or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, but anyways, I thought I would share that one with you as
well,
a starting point.
well, Barry, did you ever get a thought in your mind? And I know you were young and you have other things on your mind, but did it ever cross your mind? Oh, it's Mr. Wolf. He's back. He's followed me.
Yeah, well, of course, that thought did cross my mind because suddenly, I'm thinking I'm now in a safe place, and then something weird happens, and sure, I mean, that thought did cross my mind, like, whoa, I thought we got away from that. And for a few years after we moved, my dad continued to own that house, and somewhere he ended up moving out of there. And I don't know what happened, if he let it get, I don't know if he sold the house or if he let the bank take it, or I have no idea. I have the history on the property, and I can see when it, was out of our name, but it was, so the house was still in our family. my father, which is scary to thought, was in that house by himself at one point in time until he moved out of there and got himself an apartment. And then I don't know what, I have no idea what happened with the house at that point, other than eventually end up in somebody else's hands. But
Yeah.
at that point, the house kept getting sold over and over again. It was interesting that, as I said before, every year it seems like, or every couple of years, s- time span of people got shorter and shorter. How long they stayed in that place, but yeah, that did cross my mind. But at that age, you just kind of, as odd as it is, you just roll with the punches. I mean, I couldn't let all these things destroy me. I mean, it was stressful. You go through these things, and then you got to get up and go to school the next morning, or if you're an adult, you got to go to work after something crazy happens to you. But I don't even think I told anybody this, until recent times coming forward with these things. These are just things that happened, and nobody believed me anyway, so why bother saying anything? So I don't think I said anything to anyone about it, but I remembered it very vividly. And that's exactly how things happened with that.
How long did it stay a duplex for?
It still is, actually. I
Oh.
looked up the property. Yeah, I go into these deep dives and say, what is the history of that area and the properties? And I looked on there. I contacted my uncle and asked him when my grandparents moved in there to see how long they were there. And they were there for, 21, 22 years or something, and raised my mother and her siblings. There was a whole bunch of the kids in that family. To my knowledge, there was no issues that I'm aware of. Nobody, but honestly, if even if something did happen, nobody would have said anything probably, because they just didn't talk about this stuff like I do. you know, they they just kept their mouths shut, and nobody would acknowledge odd things, as far as I know. So maybe something happened. Like I said, it was built in 1930, so I don't have any idea who was in that home prior to my grandparents, but it stayed in their hands. They owned it when my mother moved in. They continued to own that home and rented the one side to my mom and to the other side to my uncle, her brother, and it stayed in the family for many years and eventually got sold. But yeah. So, anyways, that was that for that story.
Well, now let's talk about what you have titled The Field of Screams.
I thought it was a good title.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, maybe that'll be the episode title. Maybe I cannot
Hey,
I cannot
whatever
avoid
you,
how awesome that is.
yeah, whatever makes you comfortable and you want to do, that's fine with me. But yeah, I'm moving on from the boogeyman. But you did finally ask me, why do you keep saying the boogeyman? I was like, I just don't want to say the name out loud. It's like looking in the mirror and calling what I forget the teenage thing where you say the
Bloody
name.
Mary.
Yeah, oh, that's it, that's it. Yeah, it was sort of that thing was going on in my head going, "I don't know if I wanna keep saying the name 'cause, I don't wanna invoke it,"
Just
but,
like you're not
again,
supposed to talk about skinwalkers. You know, you can't say the name, you
yes,
don't say their
that's
names
right.
out loud. So, yeah.
Oh, man, it's fascinating, but at same token, I'm cautious. I have reason to be cautious for these things. Well, yeah. So we're going to go into this is ancient times for some of your listeners. I know, but 1977. Now, I just finished 10th grade, and I was kind of a wild and crazy kid. I like rock and roll, and I had some new buddies from school. I moved from out in the country back into town. My life was complicated as a kid. Moved in with my father and his new wife, and I ended up. I wanted to be around my friends and go back to my old school, I guess, and I don't know. Any case, I did what I was doing. So I moved into town and I had new friends from 10th grade, and I had to cross over town on my bicycle to go see my friends at this time. None of us had cars. We were 16 years old, around that age. And None of us had cars. None of us had a girlfriend at this point in time. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, but we there was not a lot going on for us. So we were just kind of killing some time. We were walking around. It was dark at night. We were walking around, and we there's a huge cemetery in my town. I don't know. I know that we cut through the cemetery a few times, and maybe goofed around in there a little bit as a dare. But I'm not sure if we cut through. I think we went through on the side street, just walking the entire length of the cemetery on a little shady side street, brick side street, going past the cemetery. And what we were doing, we didn't really have any big plan or anything, but I think we're cutting down. There was a big field across the road because the cemetery is on the edge of town. And once you cross past the cemetery, it really kind of the town pretty much ended. And then it kind of turned into fields and some country. And then if you kept driving, you'd be out there in the sticks. But um, we were on the edge of town right there. And I won't play total innocence. We may have had some alcohol possibly that we were going to experiment with that I don't remember, I don't think we weren't drunk or anything when this happened. So I'm just trying to figure out, why did we go down into the field? I mean, other than just trying to find some place to go and something to do. I'm assuming maybe we were, gonna try to drink something, but none of us would have been of age, and that would have been bad behavior. But we were drinking age was 18. We were 16, maybe going on 17 at this point. But I don't really recall doing any of that specifically. But I was trying to figure out, why would we go down in there in the first place. But we were wandering around the neighborhood doing basically nothing, and we just kind of went down over into this field and thought we would just park it down in there, and that way nobody's going to hassle us or anything. And you could just keep wandering around with no place to go. I guess that was part of the problem. So we just walked in across the street from the cemetery, directly across the street from it. This little small brick street we crossed over, and this field, the grass was probably about waist high. And we walked down, and it was a slight slope, and it kind of went down into a valley. And there were some little patches of woodsy areas down there, and we just kind of went down there and randomly picked a spot, and we sat down, and we were just being goofy kids. I think four of us, yeah, four of us that evening, and we were all just sitting around busting on each other and so forth, and being silly. And somewhere right around, after we settled in a little bit, everything seemed fine and normal. And we suddenly got hit by the stench of some kind of rotting meat, rotting animal, rotting carcass of something. I don't, it's a putrid odor hit us, and it came out of nowhere. And there may have been some accusations from one another as to who made such a horrific odor, but this was nothing that came from a human. I mean, it was really wretched, and it hit us quick out of nowhere. It wasn't like that when we got there. And then all of a sudden, this disgusting, horrible smell came over us. And we started just looking around, and we were all sitting in the grass. We matted the grass down. We were all sort of sitting around in a circle in the grass, um, just kind of going, "What in the heck is going on?" And then by looking around, we noticed that the whole area had suddenly seemed to have gotten foggy. Like there was foggy mist came in, which I don't know if it naturally happened, but it sure seemed like it came out of nowhere. And we were now in this field with this stench of rotten meat, or then there was a fog kind of rolled in on us, very odd, to say the least. And we were completely confused about what was happening, you know. And then to make things even stranger, we heard something and we could see something running through the tall grass towards us. And all of a sudden, this huge black dogs s- came right out at, I mean, we were on the ground sitting, and this big, huge dog comes and his head pops through the grass and he's staring at us basically eye to eye. And I don't know if this was a Rottweiler, what it was, something big with a big black head, and it was scary as heck. And it just sat there staring at us and let this low growl out. And we were petrified. We were afraid to move. We didn't know what to do. And then I looking up, you could see the silhouette of a man standing up on at the top of the sloped hill, and he was in this mist, so you couldn't see what was going on, but looked like he was kind of backlit by a street light, and he didn't move at all. But the weird part was the dog ended up turning around and leaving, and the odd thing was this man was dressed, he was not dressed like a normal person at all. He was dressed with this big wide brimmed hat and a long like coat, the knee length coat on. And here it was summer in New York, and we were all in t-shirts and jeans out there, and yeah, it was just very, very strange. The whole thing just seemed so odd. And of course, we were, you know, in this freaked out moment. And I'm sure that somebody's skeptical, will be like, oh, it was some guy walking his dog, and you guys were, you know, down there drinking Boone's Farm strawberry wine or something. But you know, none of it. We were not intoxicated or anything like that. And the way that it all happened, so one thing after another, it really just was very strange.
I mean, did when the dog left, did it go towards this man?
Yeah, well, he went into the tall grass and went back the same direction that he came from. So I'm assuming he went back to where the man was. I didn't never saw the dog again, and it was foggy, so I couldn't see the ground, you know, at that point either. But you could see the where the grass had moved, you know, going through this. It made its own pathway through the grass right directly at us. And yeah, the weird part was then after all that happened, we were just kind of all sitting there freaked out, and we just got this feeling. Like I got this feeling. I don't know what, my friends barely spoke to me about this afterwards, but I did try to make them talk to me afterwards. But I just got this feeling like this man was mad and he wanted us out of there, kind of a thing. I got this impression from this figure that was there. And then before we know it, this figure, which I never actually saw it moving around or it never said anything, it just sort of seemed like in this misty fog, it seemed like it just kind of faded away or stepped out of sight, and that was it. Except, of course, we ended up jumping up, and everything seemed like it cleared away. The misty fog seemed to like it was starting to go away, but we didn't stick around for long, and we all ended up running home. We split up and went different directions. And actually, the one kid, he never hung out with us again. He ended up finding religion, and he thought he saw the devil that night, and he ended up finding religion, and I think he ended up getting it, joining the military or something. But never did he ever come and hang out with us again. And I remember calling my friends the next morning and going, "What the heck happened? What was that last night?" and they did not want to talk about it, and we never did talk about it ever again.
Well, it sounds like you weren't the only one that it left an impression on.
Yeah, that's for sure. It definitely affected all of us. It wasn't something normal. It was definitely something that was not it was something paranormal. But of course, when I saw the movie The Omen and I saw those dogs come running in the cemetery, I thought of that moment that we had that experience where these dogs, it seems so cliche, but this is what happened. And it was a big, huge black dog, and thank God, he could have ripped our faces off at that point. We were at a disadvantage, sitting on the ground in the grass, and have this huge dog come running out. Yeah, I mean, I like dogs, I like animals, but you don't want to meet them like in this kind of a situation. This thing, the way he just kind of came charging through, and then stopped right there and just sat there and stared at us, and then this low growl, and then we didn't hear anybody call him or no noise, but he just turned around and then left. But it was like a warning.
So you said that the grass was about waist high to you guys. When the dog was coming through, you guys are sitting. When the dog is coming through, could you see the top of its ears or its head or any part of its body as it's moving through the grass
No, we
before it
just
came out?
no, not at all. But we heard something and we could see the grass moving.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we saw that, it was pretty much right up on us.
Right.
We just started or heard something and could see the grass moving, and at that point, all of a sudden, this dog just popped his head out in out of the grass,
I
and
mean,
so
how
freaky.
big is big? I mean, when you're it's at night and maybe
Yeah,
you're having fun with your friends, you might even be a little bit freaked out and don't even know it because you're maybe somewhere where you possibly should be, and you're definitely doing something that you shouldn't. So, how big
maybe.
is big? Is this like you mentioned a Rottweiler as a
Well,
breed?
yeah, yeah. I mean, because the size of the dog's head, I would say that was pretty good description. I mean, I couldn't see it being brown and black. It just looked like a large black dog with a very large head, and that's really all
Yeah.
remember. And it all happened so quickly, and the adrenaline rush of it all was, you just you don't know what to think. We didn't dare to move. We were like frozen when that happened. And then within a matter of seconds, I suppose it felt like an eternity when it was sitting there staring, but I imagine it was only a matter of seconds, and then it turned and left. But it was very, very strange. It was scary. It was a very intimidating dog. Let's just say that much. I mean,
My,
I
my
yeah,
friend W.T. Watson actually has an entire book that is based upon, I think it's the actual title, Mist, Clouds, and Fog in some iteration in order like that. Don't quote me on that,
really.
but in the paranormal, essentially. Clouds,
Wow.
Mist,
Okay.
Fog in the paranormal. So it's just
Ooh,
interesting the second that like my eyebrows went up when you said that this fog kind of rolled in and
yeah.
then the atmosphere changed prior to seeing these two. I'll call them fellows. Who knows what what the dog was,
Absolutely.
but that strange man, I'm sure, was the coup de grace for the whole thing, and not even seeing him move. So you didn't even see the long coat flapping in the breeze. And how far away would you say this man was from you?
Boy, that's a good question. We weren't that far down this slope. It was a long, it was a the field sloped downward. I would say it's probably half a football field or less. Yeah, I wasn't that far. Gosh, I wish I could tell you how many feet it was away, but I would imagine it was, yeah, probably quarter of a football field to a half of a football field.
Yeah.
Maybe that. I mean, it was clearly a figure of a looked like a large man wearing very unusual clothing. I did not see it. A matter of fact, you know what it looked like? And which the movie didn't exist, but if I was to say you would put the Jeepers Creepers guy up on the top of that hill in the silhouette form, that's what it had.
Mm.
Had this very wide brimmed hat, which was I don't know anybody that walks around wearing a very wide brimmed hat. Typically, well, I might have known some wild character in my lifetime that would, but this was not your normal fashion statement of the day, especially in the summer months, and also wearing a long coat. I don't, I can't say that because it was misty, all we just saw the form. I couldn't see anything animated. I didn't see things. There was no wind that night. It was a calm night. That was a weird part. It was a perfectly clear evening when we headed out. Everything was perfectly fine. But then where did this mist come from? You got me. Just seemed to show up right after we started smelling this stench of what smelled like rotting
See,
flesh,
and
or
that's
I
the other
guess.
thing is that smell that hit you guys prior to. So I could see where your friend kind of goes if you take it in straight into that context of I saw the devil and that was his hellhound, and you have this mist that comes through or fog, and you have this horrible smell. So I could see where your friend may have a mind to go all the way to I saw the devil that night.
Yeah. Well, he was raised Catholic. I
Right.
wasn't.
Right,
And
that's
so
his lens. So he just went
instantly,
all the way there.
yeah. And like I say, he never, his name was John. He never ever hung out with us kids again. And matter of fact, I was like, what's happened with him? They're like, oh, well, he's found religion. He's going to church now. He doesn't want to hang out with us anymore, kind of a thing. I was like, wow, okay. But for me, it was a weird experience. I was highly disturbed. The next day, I remember just getting on my bike and riding home and just going, kind of freaked out a little bit. But the next morning, I called my one friend Dave up, and I'm like, "What the heck happened last night?" He didn't feel comfortable to talk about it. And, I go, something weird went on, and he's just like, yeah, but we never, typical teenage guys or whatever, we never spoke about it again after that. It was no, we never told anybody else or anything, but it was very unusual experience, and it was pretty darn scary. But there is something else I need to add to the story, if that's okay with
Yeah,
you.
go right ahead.
Well, I was doing some homework, curious, trying to look for answers. Like, what in the world happened? I found out that that cemetery had a pauper's graveyard because, they have to bury people who don't have the money to be buried somewhere. And the cemetery owned that field across the street. Actually, the last time I went up there were actually legitimate graves on the other side of the road, and one of the sections, and that field the section that we were in is still unmarked, but I'm pretty sure that location, and somebody years ago had told me that uh, of course after the incident, that's why I was asking about it. That because I the person got a job doing maintenance work or something there at one point, and I asked them if there was a pauper's grave in the yard, and he said, "Yeah, across the road." And so, yeah, we may have been sitting over this man's grave, and he didn't like it. That I don't know that for sure, but I think we pissed him off, and maybe, and he was trying to get us the heck out of there.
So all of these graves would be unmarked graves.
Yeah, sadly, they were. Well, if there were any markings, they would have been in the grass, I guess.
Right.
Maybe there would have been some small little. There was no stones or anything like that, no signs or nothing that we saw. All we saw was just a grassy field, and there was a side road near, not too far from where we were at, where vehicles could drive down in there. Well, we didn't, it was like a vehicle, it was just a dirt path basically for vehicles. Well, I come to realize that that was from the cemetery using that little road to drive their vehicles down in there, probably to bury or to maybe maintain that property or whatever they were doing with it. But um, yeah, it was a strange summer experience for us.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, at least you knew that the dog, I mean, as far as it being on this plane of existence, it was physical because it was moving the grass. So I guess at least there's that. But all these other things added together, that would have freaked me out too.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, this cemetery is like 38 acres of, thousands of bodies buried there. So having paranormal activity around the cemetery wouldn't be a big surprise, I wouldn't think. So,
Right.
but I don't know. I have more questions than answers to it, but it is something that happened to us, and it was a weird experience for sure.
I wonder, Barry, if in some dark, forgotten area of the internet back when, it all started with AOL chats and forums and things, right? The internet did long before podcasts. If there are some written account of someone else seeing this dog and it's whatever that was, companion.
Yeah, actually, somebody mentioned to me that there was a tradition that the first person that died in the town was, now this may have been in Europe or something. They they would bury a dog along with the person
Mm-hmm.
to be the guardian of the cemetery. I'd never heard anything about this, but the cemetery itself was established in the 19 or in 1858 or something, I believe. The cemetery, and there was, I mean, it's a interesting, pretty creepy place to wander through there. There was times, it seems like I always ended up in a cemetery when I go home. I have family buried in this place, so I go to see them. But there's been times when I'm walking over other people's graves, going, "Excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, I mean no harm. Don't follow me home, please," because I feel like I'm at risk going into these places. Like, oh, just ignore me. I'm just here to see family. But yeah, it's a huge place, and so I don't know, but yeah, it is curious. It's just one of them curious incidents that happened.
Well, yeah, and in fact, I believe it was our second episode, not our first. I could be wrong, but the second episode in my 3-part with Mark and Erica of Eerie
Oh, okay,
Travels. We covered the
yeah,
dark side of the Smoky Mountains, and one of the little sections of the chapters that I chose had to do with a phantom black dog. And the thinking was what you just said, that it was this dog that was buried at the edge or the corner of this cemetery that kept coming back to keep watch of said cemetery. So who knows?
ooh, well, I know them, and I'm gonna have to talk to Mark about that.
Oh,
That
he
sounds
he will know all
yeah,
about that. Yeah, that was a great one. There's so many in that book. It was tough to
uh,
choose, but I love
yeah,
any phantom black dogs or any kind of a guardian element to things, whether it be
yeah.
good or bad. But it's all
Well,
fascinating.
I guess I can say I believe I've had one of those experiences then. And yeah, I have some of their books, and they're great, by the way. Anybody listening, you should check out their books. Well, any case, that was definitely an interesting moment in my teenage years, but there were more if you want to hear some more.
Yeah, let's move to that haunted mansion on the lake, shall we?
Why not? Sure. Let's do it. Okay. Yes. So again, when I moved down to by my grandparents, they right next door to where we were living was a property right on the lake. And this place, my goodness, it was a for children, all the kids in the neighborhood there, we would all explore around on this property. It was 10 acres of land that nobody was living on, but it was owned by a wealthy old woman that lived in a huge mansion in town. And this property, there was a maintenance guy. We called him Frogman, the kids. I didn't make it up, but he had a strange voice and he would yell and curse at us and all kinds of swear words when he would chase us off the property. Bernie, talk like this. So we had a nickname for him, and I'm sure that we gave him a run for his money. But really, most of the time, this is a place where nobody locked their doors in this neighborhood. All the kids, we ran feral during the summer months. I mean, barefoot, tar bubbles stuck to our feet. We ran around fishing in the lake, going up the creek. There was a creek right nearby, looking for, picking, lifting rocks and finding creepy, weird things that crawled under them. And there was on the property, this 10-acre property. This was in a crazy place. It felt very eerie and strange to be on there. The place, nobody had lived on this property, I don't believe, since the 1930s. And so there was a huge mansion, an 8 bedroom, 4 bath mansion that was on the lake. And this is a Victoria, it was actually built 1920, the house, but there was a barn on the property. There was a huge boathouse. There was a ballroom. I mean, this place. There were carriage houses. A chicken coop was. There was just all kinds of interesting things to explore as kids. A big pond that was filled with bullfrogs, which we would catch. And we would go there and play frisbee and, just do our own, just play around the property more or less, not really looking for any trouble or anything. But it was a playground for kids for sure. And there were woods attached to the property as well. And there was an artesian well out there. We would drink the water out of the artesian well and sit up in a big oak tree up there and build forts in the woods and stuff. So it was a very strange place. But also, again, this is the same area where I found Indian native artifacts around in the woods and around the lake property there. So that area had been inhabited for a very long time. And in the lot of woods that was the barrier between the house that I was living in and the property with the mansion, there was a lot of woods there. And that originally was a spot where the huge Victorian hotel sat that was torn down or burned down. I've seen two different stories to that one, that either it was burnt down or the owner tore it down because it just wasn't making money. The whole property was owned by a very very wealthy industrialist, and the back in the Victorian times, this man made a lot of money, and so he purchased this property, and it was his son that ended up building the mansion. So there's quite a bit of history to it. And so when I was, as a teenager, I was with some other teens roaming around one day, and we were up. This thing had a huge porch and everything, and we discovered that somebody had gotten into the house. The windows were boarded up, but somebody had managed to pry the board away and found and was able to open up a window and got in there at one point. And of course, and I mean, this is bad teenager behavior, and forgive me, people, but curiosity, we could not help ourselves to want to take a look inside this place. So we kind of moved this board out of the way and opened the window up and peeked inside, and it looked just like a, what you would imagine a haunted mansion at the time. At that time, the place is all fixed up nice now, but at the time there was uh, fabrics covering all kinds of furniture in there. The whole place was fully furnished in there, and it was in really good condition. It'd been taken care of, just was locked up tight for years. And well, we ended up entering into the place and kind of just went in there, looked around pretty quick. And we could see that there was like newspapers from the 1930s in there. So nobody had been living in there since the 1930s. It didn't look like. Of course, after taking a quick look around, we kind of scooted out of there, and like, well, that was exciting and adrenaline rush and a half. But we put things back the way it was, and but we, being teenage kids, ended up going in there a few other times, and we didn't disrupt anything or take anything. We kind of just went in there as a dare, and I but that was it. But somewhere along the line, when I got my driver's license, I went on a double date with my friend Woody. And then this is probably one of the first dates we ever went on. I guess I had I was driving, and we had these girls with us, and we were trying to keep them entertained and find things to do. And there's an old Midway up the road on the lake that we went to that had a arcade and stuff. And on the way back, we weren't sure what to do next or whatever. And I'm sure it was my idea that, hey, there's this mansion. Let's you know let's go there. And these poor girls reluctantly agreed to follow along with us to this mansion. But this was not a planned event. Of course, I spoke to my friend Woody about this in recent times, actually, to see if he remembered. And he's, oh my gosh, yes, I remember that incident. And um, it's funny because when we got to this mansion, I mean, it's dark out. This is a scary situation, and these poor girls went along with us. But what he said, well, we were probably hoping to scare them, and then they would jump into our arms and kiss us. And I was like, well, obviously that didn't work out. Woody, did it? So, yeah, but silly teenage boys, who knows? We were just, you're just kind of living life as it is, and rolling with the punches, whatever comes your way. And so we got to I drove my little car down onto the property, and we walked over to the mansion, and we entered into the building. We had no flashlights. We had one Bic lighter, which was new. Now, I didn't smoke, but one of my friends did. So, I, anyways, somebody was smoking, and we had this Bic lighter. And I used that. I knew my way up to, there was a room up at the top of the stairs that I had been into with some other kids at one point, and we sat around on the floor, and there was a table and there was candle there, because the all the windows were shuttered at that point in time. And I know we've been in there. I've been in there a couple times, but only for brief moments. They're mostly as a dare kind of a thing. But so, any case, I was leading the way, and these two girls were in the middle, and my friend Woody was in the back, and we were kind of going along to creeping up the stairs. And I went to enter into the room. The door was closed, and when I went to try to turn the doorknob to open it, the door would have opened inward. I was getting a resistance, as if somebody was on the other side of the door holding it shut, right? And of course, they didn't know what was going on, but I'm holding a lighter in my one hand, and I'm futzing with the doorknob, trying to push the door open, and felt like something was pushing and pulling or pushing the door shut. And they're like, "What are you doing?" Kind of a thing. And then all of a sudden, the door opened, and this I said I used the word wind, which was the wrong word to use. It was a br- a chilled breeze, if you will, came out of the room, and as soon as it did, the top of the lighter that I had just fell right off of the lighter. And we were in the pitch black. It's just it was so weird. I mean, uh, was it a faulty lighter? I don't know, maybe, but the odds of it and the timing of this was incredible. And of course, now everybody's screaming at me, "Where turn the light, where's the light?" And I'm sitting there going, "What in the heck happened?" I'm in the dark. No, the lighter's broke, and this bone chilling feeling came over us, and suddenly, I'm like, "We got to go," and we just kind of all ended up running out of the place. Boy, those girls were not happy with. They thought that we did all this just to scare them. I was scared, but they thought it was all, we were just pulling a prank. And they were like, "Just take us home." They were upset with me, and I was trying to apologize, but it was what it was. But it felt like this, whatever that energy was, it followed us all the way through the place till we got out of the building. You just felt like something was right on your tail chasing you out of there. And it was very really quite a creepy, strange little experience because I was trying to explain to my friend that no, they wouldn't let me. I was trying to explain to the girls. I didn't do it anything. I couldn't open the door, and then it opened, and then the lighter just broke. I don't. It was weird,
I would
but
hazard to say that you fellas did not get a second date with those ladies.
no, there was no hugs, no kisses. Good night.
Dang it,
That
it
was
didn't
just,
work.
yeah.
What he's like,
How,
dang it.
how not to yes, how not to get a second date. Yeah, well, that was my bad. It was my idea. I'm sure of it. Just trying to. I thought, hey, we could get them up in that room. Maybe we could smooch them. I don't know. It's probably Woody was probably right when he said that to me. But I don't know that there was any true intention of any kind other than, hey, something, a fun thrill,
Something
kind
to
of a
do,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, sure. And at that age, you're just, we're not looking for trouble really. We're just looking for something exciting to do. And, it was one of those crazy things. But yeah, those girls, that was the end of that. And, but it's funny, my friend remembered the incident, and he said, "Oh, we probably got some Boone's Farm strawberry wine for them or something." Well, we never even had a chance. If we did, there was no chance to even indulge in anything at all because the night was over after that. So, but you would think that after that, I would not have gone back in there, but that's not how things are with me. I ended up going in there two times more than that because after that incident, I told some other friends of mine, "Hey, that mansion's haunted," and they were like, "Yeah, right, okay, sure," And I wanted to try to prove to them somehow, and so I brought a couple of my other friends there, and they weren't as brave as these girls because we were not going in there at nighttime. We went in there during the daytime, but they there was the top of the lighter laying on the floor right there, like I told them, and we went inside the room. The I opened the door up without any resistance, and it was kind of weird. I wondered afterwards, like that door. Every time it's always closed, but I don't remember closing it. Like I'm going to close the door after myself or anything like that. So that made me kind of wonder about that. But I brought these other couple kids there, and we sat up in the room and we could hear noises, but this place is 100 years old. It's or close to it at that point. I don't know. And, there were probably squirrels and other animals around. And so I couldn't say that anything was paranormal happening while we were there. And I was kind of like bummed out a little. In some ways, I was like, gosh darn it, I'm trying to prove my something happened. But they're like, yeah, sure. Uh huh. And that was kind of it. We were sitting in that room on the floor again. And then we got up and we left. Well, the following day, actually it was after dinner. The following day after dinner, I discovered that my wallet was missing. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, where's my wallet? I looked all over the place. I had just got my driver's license, which was in my wallet, probably $5 if I was lucky to have anything in there other than that. But I was really concerned. And then I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I think I remember sitting on the floor and my wallet was uncomfortable because I was sitting on the floor and I took it out of my pocket. And thought, I think the last time I saw my wallet was in the mansion, which was a really horrifying thing to think about. And it was after dinner, it's getting towards dusk and I was supposed to go and meet some friends, but without my driver's license and my wallet, I wasn't going to be going anywhere. So I ended up having to go back to the mansion. I was uh, at my mom and my siblings were still living in the house over there, and I was over there, and I just walked over to that property, and I felt like the length of walking there and the dread of me having to go in there by myself really was getting to me. Each step I got closer, the more uncomfortable I was. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta just try to go in there quick as I can and go and see if my wallet's in there and then get out of there is, what I was thinking. But I was dreading going in there because I knew something was in that house. And so, sure enough, I enter into the building. And as I do, it is very uncomfortable. I feel like the ghost of Mr. Chicken here with that. It's different when you got friends with you, but when you're by yourself, that changes everything. And so I went and I remember stepping up, got to the staircase and I looked up and that's really when I was like, oh gosh, I just feel so nervous about walking up them steps. But I did. And I entered into the room and sure enough, there was my wallet sitting on the floor. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank gosh, I found my wallet. Well, I grabbed my wallet, and I'm embarrassed to admit this part of the story, but it's important part of the story. For some reason, right as I got my wallet, it hit me that I had to pee really bad. I mean, like, why I couldn't have waited, I don't know, but there was a bathroom upstairs. And of course, this bathroom is from 1920, bathroom. And I'm so embarrassed to admit it, but I'm going to tell you the story as it was exactly how it happened. I decided that, so I, the drain in the tub would drain, and maybe it was from gravity or whatever. The toilet, I didn't have any hope for that. So, whatever reason, I went into this gold claw foot tub and began to relieve myself. Oh God, I can't believe I'm telling the world this story. But anyways, right at that moment, a door flew open with a tremendous force right across from the bathroom. And it was the door that went to the attic of the house. And I was in absolute shock. And I looked, and what I believe I saw, it would have only been for a matter of seconds, but it looked, I believe that I saw a very angry looking woman from like a Victorian era, a very, you know, it was an apparition. At one point, I remember my brain trying to think it must have been a painting of this lady there or something, but no, I believe that it was a woman in a dress with her hair up in a, some kind of a rich, wealthy looking lady, angry woman staring right at me. And I just flew out of there, jumped through down the stairs without touching the stairs, probably urinated all over myself and everywhere. I don't know, but I literally ran out of the place, dove out of it practically, and just kept running until I got home and realized that I needed to take a shower and change my clothing at that point, and I never went back into the place ever again. But I learned my lesson the hard way, and I don't blame her for being pissed off at me at all because I deserved it. But my gosh, why I couldn't have just waited till I got out of there, I regretted that.
I mean, that sure does tie in to the door having resistance on it and a cool breeze coming out once it does when you were with those ladies, and it almost seeming like she wanted to make sure for that instance, I'm going back of course to the first time, that you guys got out,
No,
and now
no,
she
no
wanted to
hanky
make
panky.
sure again.
She didn't want no hanky panky in her house,
No, she
which
seemed
wouldn't have happened anyways, I'm sure.
like she wanted no muss, no fuss, and she was pissed
Yeah,
then because then you were essentially
yeah. Oh,
doing what
like
you were doing.
now when I told my wife that story, she just looked at me like, "What the heck is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I was a teenage boy. I don't know, I just whatever, I was embarrassed, but again, this is how the story went, and yeah, she was mad, very angry at me. The interesting thing is, this family, that was their summer home. This was just their summer home. And, this was, these people lived a very lavish lifestyle back in those days. And so to have some rugrat kid, uh, you know, showing up there, whatever. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what to call myself. But, anyways, some scrappy little kid showing up in their house and then defiling their bathtub. I mean, my goodness, I, uh, I wasn't the kind of kid that was a destructive kid. I didn't go around, tearing the place apart or anything. I had no interest in. I didn't, there was all kinds of antiquities and things, but we didn't even really roam around in the house too much, other than going into that one room. And like I say, it was for a dare, really, until but then I realized something really was going on in the house. But just recently, I was doing some more research on the place and found out that the man that built the place had died in the building in the 1930s. So, for whatever reason, he was in that home instead of the other big mansion that he probably owned many properties. But so I know that there was at least the property stayed in a family for years. So I know that there was his death in there, but I couldn't find any information. But I believe it was his wife that I saw, and but I could not find any information on her death, where that took place. But I don't blame her. She probably loved her summer retreat and was not happy that some stupid kid like me was in there doing that.
Well, and that's all to say that, and these will not be shared with anyone, but you sent them to me, that this place has been refurbished. It is no longer just an abandoned mansion, and it is absolutely beautiful. And I'm very curious if the people that live there now have any activity.
I really am too. And believe me, I wanted to so badly, uh, you know, talk to them. But it matter, of course, yeah, there's no trespassing signs there, and it's a private. I drove past there and thinking the same thing, like, oh, I just want to go and talk to those people. But yeah, I would be very curious about that myself, and I'll never probably find out the answer to that. But it is an interesting place. Yes, it looks amazing. Back at the time that in the '70s, again, when we were going around there as kids, the place showed it looked like it was just frozen in time, basically. Like it was just a place that was out. It was such a strange atmosphere that this magnificent place that just kind of was sitting there still for decades, and with nothing going on. The wealthy old lady would have a drive her down in her old Cadillac, 1950s Cadillac, just to drive through there to see the property, and then she'd leave. It was she was the heiress to the family fortune, but never stayed there, never went in the place that I'm aware of or anything like that. It was just do a loop, do a drive by, and that would be it. But yeah, it was a very interesting place to be growing up around. And again, I am curious about it. I went and explored that neighborhood when I was home last time, just in July. But I could not go down to the into that property anymore. So it is what it is.
I can't blame you for that one, especially with that coup de grace episode at the very end there, seeing that very upset woman. So I don't blame you.
Well, I don't know if I would be comfortable walking back in there ever, but on the other hand, I'm like, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I was a stupid kid. I regret this. So I will clean your tub for you. Well, just give me a second chance. Well, anyways, so yes, that was that. I thought then I would share another story, unless you want to have any other questions about that
No, go right ahead.
place. Yeah, so this next story takes place, I'm thinking it was in 1980. Uh, I had moved away to go to art school. I moved to Pittsburgh. I was 19, 18, going. I think it was 19 at this point in time. So at that time, I moved into a house with three other art students that I did not know. Oh, there's a shortage of housing in Pitts for the students, and we all ended up in this house, which was turned out into a party house eventually. Once, especially when the kids in the neighborhood found out that there was some art students living in their neighborhood, but one day I got up. I had to take a bus to go to school. All of us, actually, none of us had a vehicle at this point in time. And we all took the bus to go down into downtown. So we were living in a suburb north of the city in a little township called Bellevue. So we would get on the bus in the morning. We had to, we carried these huge portfolio bags with us. You put all your drawing tools and drawing board and paper and everything and your pens and stuff in this big bag and lug this bag around with you. And I went to school in the morning like a normal day, but sometime during the morning hours, I started to feel really run down to the point where just felt like it was getting worse and worse. And I just started feeling really sluggish to where I started thinking I was coming down with something. I felt like I was getting sick. And I decided that I was going to have to leave school and go home, which was something I had never done before. And So I ended up just felt like I didn't have a choice. I just needed to go. I felt like I had to go lay down. And So I left school early and I went and got to the bus stop, and I had been used to taking my bus at a specific time, so then I had to go there and hope to catch the next bus. to get back to Bellevue. And I managed to get on the bus and headed back. And I got off the bus to head home. And I was just literally felt like I was crawling just about. Well, usually I was, very quite a spry young kid, always walking everywhere and had this bag. It didn't seem, but the bag felt like it weighed 100 pounds to me at the time. And I was just trying in Pittsburgh, it's all hills, So I was just trying to get home. And when I finally did get home, I got to the house and it was quiet. Nobody was there, which is a rare moment for me to get into the house when nobody was around. And I went up to my bedroom, which was in the attic. So 3 stories up, I get in, went to up to my bed and I laid down and I just immediately fell asleep. And while I was sleeping, I heard my father's calling me. I heard his voice calling me. Sounded like he was standing at the bottom of the stairs calling up to me. And my brain was going, oh my gosh, dad's here. I got to answer him. And I was struggling to answer him. I was trying to open my mouth and say, yeah, dad, but I was having difficulty to say anything to him. And then the next thing I know, I opened my eyes up. At least I thought I opened my eyes up. And my face was right up against the ceiling of my bedroom. And I could hear my dad talking to me in the room. He sounded a little echoey, but he was talking to me. And, you know, this, uh, he was asking me stuff about my life that was going on there. And, at that time, my dad and I, he was busy with his life and I was busy with my new, this small town kid moving into the big city. It was quite an adjustment for me. And that wasn't a great adjustment by any means, having all these new roommates and kids in the neighborhood and, having to go into the big city and everything. I was struggling with some things going on with that, but he was talking to me, but I was confused. I'm like, what is happening? Why am my face right up against the ceiling? It's weird because I almost could feel the heat coming from the ceiling, like the sun or and the smell of it even. It's so odd to say that, but in the midst of all this stuff going on, it felt like we were having some telepathic communication, which, again, I was confused about what was going on. I somewhere along the line turned myself around and I looked and I saw my body laying in the bed. And when that happened, I got frightened and my, I guess if you want to call it soul, flew right back into my body. At that point, I recall eventually waking up, hearing the phone ringing down into the kitchen, 2 stories down. This is back before cell phones when phones were attached to a wall with a cord. So, for anybody young listening to this, as soon as I heard the phone ringing, I knew. I'm like, it's dad. And I jumped up and I ran down to the kitchen and I picked up the phone. And sure enough, it was my father. And something I should mention is that my father, with his busy schedule and me with my school schedule, him calling me in the middle of the week at that hour, it was mid-afternoon by this point in time, calling me, the odds of me ever being there to answer the phone would have been almost zero. So it was very unusual to have my dad calling me like that. And there he was, but it was weird. He sounded like he was talking weird, and I thought he was sounded like he was drunk. So I was like, Why do you sound funny, Dad?" And he said, the anesthesia is wearing off. I just got off the operating table." I was like, "What?" I mean, I did not know anything about my father having an operation. Geez, talk about being out of touch here. You know, it was I was shocked and surprised that my father, nobody told me, of course, he didn't like to talk about health. I don't know. We just were doing our thing. But it would have been nice if somebody would have given me a clue about that. But my father apparently had injured his back during the winter months. So this was like spring. He was having problems, and I think they found that he had like a chip off of his spine that was getting into the nerves or so. Anyways, they decided they needed to do an operation on his back. And so, again, I knew nothing about this, but he got off the operating table and he told the nurses that needed to he needed to call his son. So they were trying to tell him, no, you need to, just rest. And he got upset and he insisted that he get to a phone. And so they let him call me. And so that's what was going on there, which was quite a shock to me.
Oh, I would imagine so. I mean, I know that we're going to be talking about some more premonitional stuff next time, so I don't want to spoil anything. But is this the beginning of any experience like this powerful? Whereas, I mean, you're at home and you're not even, as you said, the chances of you being there are 0 to nil. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
pretty powerful, actually, the timing of all of that. And that to be coincidental seems highly unlikely.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing is, as I said, I was feeling fine in the morning when I headed off to school. Everything was fine. I was doing my normal thing, just moving around. But as I was sitting in the classroom, for some reason, I just started to feel like I was going downhill. And I just feel like I was getting all of the energy just zapped right out of me.
Maybe you were feeling what your father was feeling,
Well,
being in the surgery.
that's what I wondered. I'm like, was that some kind of empathic type of thing, or was
Yeah.
it there was a reason that I don't know. This is very strange. I've been pondering this for years. Like what would make me feel like that, and then make me think I got to go home, which so it was really very strange. Like some higher force, something bigger than me was leading me to go home, to be there at a specific time in order for me to communicate with my father in some way. you you got me. I don't know.
And it would probably help you to be more in touch. Maybe you were like, "Oh, maybe I need to pay attention more to what's going on with my family."
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like I say, I was a kid who just kind of let things for longest time. Eventually, I started telling people the word no, but it was never something easy for me to do. And so I got all these personalities surrounding my life and roommates that were a real pain in the rump, and neighbor kids that would show up all hours of the day and night, coming in and out of the house. And, things quickly were getting out of hand for me. And I was supposed to be responsible for trying to get everybody to get their rent and everything. Somehow I end up being the supposed to be the guy that's responsible for stuff. And so I was stressed out, as a first time out of the home, and dealing with that. And then the neighborhood was a little bit on the rough side, not terrible, but there were, times when I would be coming home and there would be blood on the sidewalk, and somebody go, "Oh yeah, somebody got beaten here," or the I ran into some people at times going, "What? Hey, what side of the road? Where are you from here or there?" I'm like, "I'm neutral, man. I'm just an artist, kid." Whoa, don't get me in the middle of your stuff going on in the neighborhood here. But eventually the neighborhood kids wanted to wrangle me into their crazy stuff going on, and so, things were definitely getting more complicated in my life, more than I expected for an art student, but
Yeah.
um that's just the way things it was just happened to be the the way things came about, there was no room in the dorms. Not that that would have been a fun situation, and there was a shortage for housing, and somehow I end up in this neighborhood with these kids and so forth. But I was doing okay, but I was not doing great by any means. So yeah, I end up there, and so my dad and we have this bit of a conversation. He started repeating a lot of the stuff that I was hearing in my head while I was floating around in my room, apparently. And so, he definitely had some visions of what was going on in my life because he knew some things that I didn't tell him or anybody else what was going on, some little things that were going on, but he was really worried for me, is what he kept saying. I'm worried about you. I'm like, I'm okay, Dad. I'm all right. I said, well, listen, you better get some rest, and I'll call you when you're feeling better or something. And but we didn't talk all that, not like people do now with we can text people, we can call, we got a phone in our pocket and all that. Back then, I would talk to my dad every couple weeks, or, he was sending me a little bit of money to get by. I think I ate 2 slices of pizza for 2 years for my dinner. It was, I was just a broke art student, and but I was the oldest kid, and I didn't want to be a burden and bother my dad about my all my problems either. So I tried to deal with my own issues, but I told him I would talk to him later. And but my mind was blown about what happened. The whole thing was bizarre. I thought, wait, I just had some kind of an out of the body experience and had telepathically communicated with my father while he was on an operating table after coming home feeling ill from school. The whole thing was really mind blowing. And when my roommates showed back up from school, they're like, "Whoa, what are you doing home?" And I say, "You won't believe what happened to me." And I started to tell them all what happened, and they all just looked at me with this look on their face. They're like, "Hey, what are you on? Give us some," kind of a thing. And my feelings were hurt, and I never said anything else to them again. But I was so excited, and you know, my mind was blown about it. I wanted to share it with somebody, but the reaction was not a very good one. So I didn't say anything else to them.
Well, that is a wild and really special connection, I would say, and a very cool experience to have. Really powerful.
Yeah, I should mention that my father, that was his mother that is the clairvoyant, by the way. So
Yes.
yeah, and so when I did finally get to see my dad, he did not like talking about strange things like this. Even though maybe it's because we've talked about this before, because my grandmother, he had to deal with all that. But when I did see him, I said, "Dad, something incredible happened." I said, "We were hundreds of miles away from each other, and we telepathically communicated with each other while you were on the operating table." And I said, "What do you remember?" And so he told me, he opened up and he told me, he goes, "I remember seeing my entire life flashing before me, and I saw each and every one of my children before my eyes and what was going on in their lives." And basically said, "I see you hanging out with some wild kids," which was true. Uh, well, of course, the crazy art students, and then all these crazy kids from the neighborhood coming around. So he wasn't 100% wrong about that by any means. There was a lot of crazy. There was just chaos going on in my life with all these people and personalities, which I like things a little more chilled out, but I ended up in this situation. But anyways, he acknowledged that he had this experience and that he saw, for whatever reason, like watching a movie of every one of his children. Now, my father, there were 4 of us children originally. I was the oldest child, and then he got remarried and ended up with a couple more kids. So, he said he could see everything going on in our lives, and he was mostly concerned about me. And so that, at least I got him to talk about it.
Do you know if he coded at all during his surgery, or was this we don't have information like that, or he wouldn't have known such things?
That I wondered about that. It's funny how things go by. Years go by. Nobody talks to me about it, and I have to every once in a while I'll come back and start thinking. And the more I learned, the more I've been learning about the paranormal experiences and uh, near death experiences and so forth, then it just adds more questions. I'm like, I thought, wow, I wonder if something happened while Dad was on the operating table that may have put him in that situation where. Which they never talked to me. Nobody told me anything about that. But my stepmother's still around, but I don't know if I would ever be able to get any information. I did bring it up to her about when he had his operation. I didn't ask her that specifically, but I'm thinking maybe I might just ask her if there was any complications during that surgery,
Yeah.
out of curiosity. But it is interesting. Something else that I should mention is not long after that incident, I got mugged down in the city in downtown at the bus stop by a gang of guys and ended up hospitalized with very some pretty serious injuries, and ended up with ruptured kidneys and bruised lungs and contusions and concussion, and my face was beaten to a pulp, and I ended up in the hospital for a few weeks and missed out on a whole semester of school over that. And actually, after all that happened, somewhere along the line, I ended up moving from there. No offense, Pittsburgh. I mean, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But and some wonderful person picked me up out of the street and put me in their vehicle. Total stranger, and thank goodness they took me to get help. But so there are good people out there. But my father's warning was there was a good reason that he was trying to warn me about something, and I made a mistake of I was invited to go to a party from a girl from class, and of course, none of us had a car. And I met some other boys downtown after taking the bus, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry." I'm like, "Well, I got to make sure I'm going to get home on time." And they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll get you a ride," kind of a thing. Well, I ended up downtown waiting for the bus, which had probably stopped running at that point. I don't know, but I could see some commotion going on down the street. And the next thing I know, this gang just kind of ran up on me and just started beating the crap out of me and had me in the streets. And I actually fought for my life. I got hit by adrenaline rush, realizing I was going to die there. And I, got up and was trying to defend myself and trying to get into a more lit area of the street, but nobody would stop. Nobody would help me. I don't blame them, but I was begging, screaming for help. And you know, the next thing I know, I was just laying there in the
Good
street
Lord.
bleeding. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah,
But
that's no good. That is when it's time to go.
yeah, well, I had a couple other close calls, and so that's why my dad, I said it was. I
Yeah.
had just the young kid in the wrong places, the wrong time, or whatever. But it ended up being he had reasons to be worried about me, I guess.
I would say so, absolutely. Well, Barry, that concludes this list for our part 2. So I look forward to hearing all the details for this list that I have for part 3. So thanks again for coming on, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I really enjoyed myself. It's great talking to you.